Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in to the other side of success. My name is Tyler Rutledge, and I am your host. We've got a great episode coming up today, guys. But before I jump into it, let me just thank my sponsors. I'd love to thank Game Day Men's Health in Tuscaloosa. Those guys down there, they're helping me get my body optimized the way that it was meant to be. Their clinic on 13th Street is first class, and when you walk in, they're going to make you feel right at home. It's worth the drive from Birmingham and surrounding areas, I promise. And to Farmhouse Fitness right here, Birmingham's premier gym for movement, performance, and community. Well, folks, today we've got Andy Kennedy. Andy is the head men's basketball coach at UAB and one of the most respected voices in college hoops. From standout player at UAB and NC State to longtime Ole Miss head coach and now leading the Blazers, Coach AK has built a reputation for leadership, intensity, and connecting with his players. He's also a very gifted communicator with a deep well of stories about competition, resilience, and life lessons learned in and out of the game. Coach, welcome to the show.
Hey, man, thanks for having me.
I guess also, as we were kind of talking before we came on, you've been married for a very long time and also have two grown daughters. So we need to add that into your bio.
Yeah, I've been married a long time, over 30 years, and both of my children are adults now.
Yeah.
They're adulting. Time goes fast, my man.
It does.
We were talking before we started this that you've got two young ones, and I told you to enjoy it because before long you're going to look like me. Looks like you got a good set of hair. I used to have that as well, but
I got some cul-de-sacs right here, Coach. They're going back. Hey, so one thing I always ask people, when you hear that bio, I know you don't take a lot of time to sit there and read over your own biography, but like, what does it feel like when you hear that?
You know what? You're right. Really, my business, the world of being a head coach is pretty consuming. It's very rewarding. It's very challenging, but it's certainly very consuming. So I don't really have a lot of time to sit around and reflect on the journey as much as maybe one day I will. I'm entering my 19th season as a head coach. I was an assistant for 10 years, and obviously I played for 4. So I've been in this space for over 30 years. And I'm constantly learning things each and every day, especially in this new world of intercollegiate athletics. It's probably been the most challenging off season in my career.
Wow.
Just based on everything that the world of college sports is now throwing at us.
Man, that's it's funny because you say you don't get a lot of time to reflect on the path to get there. And that's kind of exactly what this show is we get to tell people that story, what it was like. And so we're going to get into this new space of college sports and how that has certainly changed over the last few years. But take us back to growing up in, was it Louisville, Mississippi?
Louisville.
Yeah, I was like, is it Louisville or Louisville? All right. So, yeah, take us back there, man. That seems like a small town. I don't know anything about it.
Very small town. I tell people if they've ever heard of it, if they've ever been through it, they were either lost or in witness protection. Very small town, sports-centric town. As you can imagine, as most small towns in the South are, super blessed to be raised by two great parents, born in a Christian household, middle of 3 siblings. And sports was kind of the thing. The community was based around sports. And, when you're young and growing up in small town America, I gravitated towards whatever sport was in season. So I played football when it was football season, and then you go right to basketball, then you go right to baseball, and you rinse and repeat. It was a great experience for me, mainly, again, because of the way that the household that I was blessed to be raised in, again, mother and father, very strong Christians and people that worked blue collar with a capital B. And I learned at a very, very early age the importance of work, the importance of showing up, the importance of not making excuses. People don't want to hear excuses. Get up and do your job. That was ingrained in me at a very early age.
What did your folks do?
My father was an electrician, 46 years, the same company. And my mother was a homemaker and then evolved into being an assistant school teacher.
Yeah, there you go. So Daddy working in the electrical field, I don't reckon he did allow too many excuses.
Let me tell you, I say this, and I think we're past the statute of limitations. My mother's passed, unfortunately, a couple of years ago after a bout with cancer, and my father just turned 82 years old and still going strong. So I don't think they can prosecute him for this. But when I finished 7th grade, I don't know how old you are then. What is that, 11, 12? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But I finished 7th grade on a Friday, and on Monday, I went to work with him. And what I realized is the electrician. You come in, and I don't know if you know much about construction. You come in, obviously you do the dirt work, and then you put the pipes in the ground, then you lay the foundation, then you start throwing up these 2x4s, and then everything's waiting on what? The electrician. So when it's hot, they're waiting for the electrician to make it cooler. When it's cold, they're waiting for the electrician to bring the juice by which they can generate the heat. So there was a lot of pressure on electricians because, you were the next pillar in the building of something, and the elements were never very forgiving. I learned at an early age, man, what it was like to get up early and go to work. I also realized that, man, this is not for me. This is very, very difficult, and I better be good at something else. So I really dove into sports, and thankfully it led me to another path.
Yeah, it did, man. It took you a long way. And that's kind of one of the things that I want to hear about. So obviously getting up, working with your dad and all that good stuff. Like, at what point did your parents, or the people around you say, man, this guy's gifted. Like he's got a chance to really do something with this?
I don't know. At an early age, I was pretty good. I remember punt, pass, and kick. That was probably the first aha moment. You don't even remember this. Have you ever heard of punt, pass, and kick?
Yeah, no, we had it I'm not quite there, but no,
Yeah.
we had that when I was a kid.
Yeah, it was like a real big deal. I don't know why they did away with it, but they would do it. They would do one for our county, Winston County, which is where Louisville is based, and they would do a county one. And if you won that, you would go on to the state, and if you won that, you'd go to the region. And at an early age, I think 8 years old is the first time you can compete. And at 8 years old, I won the local, and then I won the state. And I started saying, hey man, maybe I can throw a ball or kick a ball or punt a ball, whatever. And I was always really, really competitive. And as I said earlier, I was competing in whatever the sport was at the season, and had an opportunity early to have some success. And I'm not sure there was ever an aha moment. I'm 6'7" sitting here today. It's long outlived its usefulness. At one time, it was very useful. Now I wouldn't mind, at about 6'2", especially when I'm traveling via commercial airlines. I didn't grow until about eighth, ninth grade. I was around 6'2", 6'3", which I guess is tall, but I didn't get to like the 6'6", 6'7" till about ninth, 10th grade. And that's when everybody was like, oh, now he's got the intangibles necessary in order to maybe do this at a high level.
Wow. That's crazy to think that. I feel like some people in the athletic space, they find out when they're 3 or 4 years old, like, man, this, think about Rory McIlroy, I think in Tiger Woods, right? Their parents had them playing golf at age 3. So, you really kind of went into it a little bit later in life, huh? Did you play basketball?
Played. I was like everybody. I played, but again, this was in the 70s.
Yeah.
You didn't really have organized sports. The first thing that you're introduced to is Dizzy Dean baseball, and that you do the T-ball stuff, then you do the baseball stuff, and that's again around whatever it is, 8, 9 years old. And then we didn't really have team sports until you get to like junior high, which is like 6th, 7th grade. And that's when you get into the middle school stuff, which obviously segues into high school. So I was a competitive guy, and knew that I needed to be good in something so that my dad would not wake me up at 5 a.m. and ask me to go carry a ladder for 8 hours.
Instead, you're waking up at 5 a.m. to go to the gym now, huh?
Yeah, that's a better option.
I'm with you, man. You got the air conditioning in there. You're not working on them. Oh, man. So when you think about growing up, Coach, and I've heard you talk a little bit about your mom and your dad, and I know from a head coaching perspective and working with your players, like mentors, and even in my life and in my business, mentors are so important. Who are some of those people that kind of help lay the foundation for you to get where you are today?
You know what? I had a high school coach at Winston Academy. Well, I grew up at Winston Academy, and then I transferred over and played at Louisville High my last 2 years strictly for athletics. I just wanted to go and play at a different level of competition at a bigger school. We had a headmaster who was our head football coach, and really, I think he's in multiple Hall of Fames. I know he's in Mississippi, and I think in Alabama, a guy named Robert Herring, who's no longer with us. But he was a very, very demanding. He was the principal of the school. He was the athletic director, and he was the head football coach. And so, again, I played quarterback. And so at an early age, he kind of instilled in me that, hey, if I discipline myself and I put in the work, that maybe I would have a chance. He was hoping it would be in football. And I segued into basketball after I hit that growth spurt, and I really fell in love with the sport. But he was the first guy that probably said, hey, man, if you got a chance, and he had a track record of having multiple guys that had gone on to the collegiate level. So I trusted his vision for me. And then the work was never going to be in question. I enjoyed playing all sports, and I was very, very competitive, terrible loser, still am.
Yep.
You show me a good loser, I'll show you a loser. So I've never really been good at that. I think as I've gotten older, I've gotten more acceptive of some things that I can't control. But at an early age, I certainly was not the best after an L. So competitive nature was always there. I was blessed physically. Athletically, I was pretty good, and everything kind of fell in place.
Man, it's so cool to hear how coaches early in life have impacted so many people, even people that don't play college sports or professional sports. If you've ever had just a good coach, they just somehow find a way to stick with you long term, which I've just always found to be so cool. So, Coach, you had a good high school career. You had a good college career. You go to NC State, then you end up at UAB. After UAB, you did go into the NBA, and I think you played for the Charlotte Hornets?
I was with the Charlotte Hornets briefly when that ended, and it's so crazy. I'll never forget the lesson. We were in the preseason, and I probably had my best outing in an exhibition game, and the next day I get fired or basically cut based on a roster situation that they'd picked up a new player. And just like that, I was kind of on the outside looking in, and I started this journey abroad. I was able to travel around multiple places around the world trying to play professional basketball. Some great experiences, some not so great. And then ultimately, after doing that for 3 seasons, 3.5, I suffered my fifth at the time and final. I've now had another, so I've had 6 total knee operations.
Goodness.
And I tore my left ACL, which used to be death to a player in the mid '80s when I hurt my first one. During my sit-out year, back in the days, you remember when transfers had to sit out. You had mentioned it. I played at North Carolina State for the late, great Jim Valvano, was a part of an ACC tournament championship team, transferred, came and played for another legend in Gene Bartow. But before I was able to play the 3 years that I had left in eligibility, I had to sit out a year. And in the summer prior to being eligible to play, I tore my ACL in the Birmingham Summer League, just kind of a freak thing. And I didn't have another year to sit out. I would have lost a year of eligibility. We did a new procedure in the medical field at the time called an allograft, and I was able to come back and play that season and be productive over my time. But then I had a few other situations with that knee, my left knee, some minor stuff, and then I tore my right ACL playing in Puerto Rico, which ended my career professionally.
I heard you in another interview say I lost a step and I didn't have a step to lose or something like that.
I was hanging on, man. After tearing my first ACL, it was an issue. You know, I was never really the same physically. I got back to where I was functional and could still be competitive, but I wasn't as good as I once was. And then I had a bunch of little situations, meniscus here, meniscus there. And so I was kind of holding on, man. I was, I was wearing thin on my tread, so to speak.
Yeah.
And when I tore my right ACL, I was done.
Yeah, you were bone on bone by that point. I remember, so growing up, my dad was an unbelievable basketball player. He tried to play at Georgia, it didn't work out for him. But he was so good that he was being recruited back then. The intramural was essentially like club level, right? Like very, very competitive at UGA. And so dad always kicked my tail in basketball my whole life. Well, he ruptured his Achilles. I think he's probably in his mid 40s when this happened, late 40s. And I had never, other than like a game of horse, I had never beaten him. I just couldn't. He was just too good. He could get the shots up and everything. And I remember when he lost that step, he finally got better a couple years later, and I was able to beat him. And buddy, I never let him hear the end of it.
Yeah, man, when the body starts breaking down, I'm 57 years old now. Some people ask me all the time, do you still play? I played probably till my early 50s, and then the body just wasn't responding anymore. And now I'll shoot it periodically, not even that much anymore, but I had my time.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. Well, so now take us, Coach, you get to Ole Miss, and you were there for a long time, and man, you did some good stuff. I believe, if I'm correct, and correct me if I'm wrong, you still hold the most wins as a head coach at Ole Miss. Is that accurate? Or
yeah, that's accurate. And who knows if somebody will stay there 12 years to get it? But I think I have more than 100 wins, more than the second most wins.
Yeah.
So I was there 12 years, a long time, and we had good years of success.
Tell us about that, man. Like, how did you handle when you go back to your childhood and the values that your father instilled in you and your mentors, and you've experienced tons of adversity just through injuries, your college career, your professional career, playing overseas. Like, you've been there, you've done that. What was it like when you get into the SEC, your first massive D1 job, and you're there for 12 years? Like, how did you handle the pressure of that?
It just kind of comes with the territory. I'll segue into this. when people find out, they become friends with myself, my wife, whatever, new friends. And if you come back into Birmingham, you meet new people and they're like, hey, what do you guys do? And Kimber's like, well, my husband's coach. And so you guys want to come to the game? We got tickets. We'd love to have you. And so people come and they sit with her during the game. And afterwards, they'll say, man, it's very stressful to be y'all's friend, because now they because they see what it's like to live the coach's life.
Yeah.
And what we take for granted when you come in from the outside, you're like, wow, this is a lot of stress, man. There's a lot going on. Most fans go to the game, they want the team to win, but they realize they're going to get in their car and go on about their life afterwards. Well, this is our lives.
Yeah.
So it's par for the course. I think, because I've been in the space, as I said, 30 years now, what would seem unusual to most is just normal to us, simply because it's the path that we've chosen. And I was really, really fortunate. It's so funny. I'll go back. After my injury in Puerto Rico and I could no longer play, I didn't know anything but basketball. I was a history major when I was getting my history degree from UAB. The thought was one day I would go to law school. I thought I could be an attorney. That's what I envisioned. And there's days in which I wish I would have taken that path, trust me. But when I played for a number of years, and then when that ended, I just couldn't get my mind around going back to school for 4 years. So I said, well, I don't really know how to do anything else. Let me do this coaching thing. So my first job was at the University of South Alabama for $15,000. People think,
Wow.
I didn't get into coaching for the money. I've been blessed, thankfully, but it wasn't about that. It was just about, getting in and doing what I felt called to do. And I coached down there, and 4 games into the season, the man that had hired me got fired, Ronnie Arrow. So just like that, we're kind of in an interim situation. New coach comes in. I don't get retained. I get out of coaching for a year and got into the commercial real estate business. Very few people know that. It moved a little slow for me. And as a result, I tried then to get back into coaching and was hired by Murray Bartow. After Gene had retired, Murray was an assistant. His son, obviously, was an assistant on the staff when I played. Murray became the next head coach, and he hired me, and I got back into coaching, and I've been in it ever since. And when I was going through the process, every assistant coach wants to be a head coach. So I got the break of a lifetime, and from UAB, and having the opportunity to go and work for Bob Huggins at Cincinnati, a top 20 program. I was there with him for 4 years and interviewed for a number of different jobs and never got them. I was right there. I thought a couple of times it might work. And again, man plans and God laughs. It never worked.
Yeah.
And then Hugs gets unceremoniously fired over a rift with administration in the 9th hour, right before we were starting season 5 together. And so they were forced to give me the job on the interim basis. They didn't want to. At the time, I'd elevated to the associate head coach, and they were trying to get rid of everything Hugs. And obviously, me being the associate head coach, they didn't want me to do it, but they had no choice just based on timing. And so I used that season. You talking about a tumultuous season. It was Cincinnati's first year in the new Big East. It was the first conference meeting of the Big East that got 8 bids into the NCAA tournament, including 2 number 1 seeds. So I had never called a timeout at any level. And here I am in Madison Square Garden in New York City for Media Day for the new and improved Big East. It's funny, I have a group picture of all the coaches, and it looks as if someone superimposed me into it, because why in the world would I be there? I'm standing by legends in the game, from Rick Pitino to Jim Boeheim to Jay Wright.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a who's who. Jim Calhoun at UConn, so it was just a who's who. And we went through that gauntlet. The Ole Miss job opened. I didn't even have a resume. I didn't have an agent. Being from Mississippi, some people that I had known growing up contacted me about interest in the job. And I said, sure. I mean, I don't have a job. My contract at Cincinnati ended in March. I wasn't going to be the next coach, nor was that the desire. I was just trying to do right by the kids that we had brought in there. And finish what we had started with Hugs' blessing, of course. Again, without a resume, without an agent, next thing you know, I'm the head coach in the SEC.
Man.
2006, to get back home, my parents at the time were right at retirement age. My girls were young, so it was perfect from a family standpoint of getting back close to my parents, at least, and fulfilling a dream. A kid that had grown up following the SEC in all sports.
Yeah.
To now have the opportunity to come back and be a head coach in that league in your home state for the flagship university, again, it doesn't get much better than that.
No, it doesn't, Coach. And I think that's one of the things that I've loved the most about casually following your story just from years of being a sports fan is that I feel like everything that you've done has been like an unconventional approach. And you've just been so blessed. And I feel like every step of the way, from an outsider's perspective, and I know that there's the other side of success that nobody sees, and there's things there, but I feel like you've been so humble in your approach. Where does that come from?
Again, it goes back to the way that I was raised. And I've also learned this. Again, I'm not as dumb as I look. And I have picked up some things. We talked about earlier experience and reflection. And everybody says, well, experience is the greatest teacher. And I'm not a big believer in that, because without reflection, experience teaches you nothing. Even though I don't have a chance to look back and walk down memory lane, I do sometimes. It's funny, I still talk with former players and still try to help in different regards if called upon. And so then I'll reflect back on their time when and how we did. And I can remember a lot of things. Coach Bartow, Gene Bartow, was like this as well. He would say to me constantly, he'd say, Lord, Andy, did you play with so-and-so? He couldn't remember who I played with as it relates to eras. I'm the same. And I would say, no, Coach, I'm 6 years younger than that kid. What are you, losing your mind? Come on, man. Don't you remember when I played? And he could recall specific games and performances that maybe I had done or hadn't done, but he couldn't do it as it relates to a time frame. And I'm the same way now. I can remember I had a phone call from a young man that I hadn't talked to in years, a few days back, and I couldn't remember the era in which he played, but I could remember, specific parts of his game and his personality and things that he had done, and then I had to go back and put it all in relation to who he played with. So I say all that to say I have come to learn that the harder that I squeeze, and I'm a hard squeezing guy, I'm a driver, I'm a fixer by nature, and I always want to fix the problem. And I've come to realize it's taken me a while that I really can't fix everything.
Yeah.
And I may be in charge, but I'm not in control. Ultimately, that's at a greater power than I. So I just try to do my job. The same thing that I try to get the young men on my team to do. Just do your job. And that's what I try to do. And my job is one of leadership. It's one of granting perspective. It's one of accountability. And it's one of trying to provide the pathway by which these young men can be successful.
Yeah. And so I sit here and think about what you're building at UAB. How long have you been there, Coach?
I'm going into my 6th season, 5 years.
And how many tournament appearances?
We've been to 4 straight. We've been to 4 straight postseasons for the first time since 07 to 11 at UAB. And UAB is a very storied program, as you well know. Been to 2 NCAA tournaments and then 2 NITs. We went to the NIT championship 2 years ago, and then this year we went to the NIT quarterfinals. We've won 125 games, which is the most over any 5-year period in the history of the program, and we've been to 4 straight conference tournament championship games. I say all that to say we have had success. The momentum, which is not easy to create in this industry, we've garnered some positive momentum, and we hope to build on that as we move forward.
And that's kind of where I wanted to go there, is because I know what UAB was before you got there. And I see the culture you're building there. I see the players you're bringing in. You're getting some top tier talent, man. What does it take to build a culture at a school like UAB? Not saying that UAB is a second rate school, but it's different, right? The campus layout is different. It's not like Auburn. It's not like Alabama. It's not like Ole Miss in the traditional sense. Like, how do you get such an incredible culture to where you're able to get these guys?
It's not easy, and it's changed tremendously. I got the job right when COVID hit. Go figure, right? I get the job in 2020. The world shut down literally a week thereafter. I remember having an introductory press conference, my coming home. Obviously I played at UAB. This is my home away from home, my alma mater, my wife's alma mater. And we did a press conference in front of no people because that was right when the whole global shutdown occurred. It was just a bananas year. And so we were able to launch this thing in a way that I wasn't real comfortable with. None of us were throughout the year of COVID. UAB's had a great basketball lineage, starting with Gene Bartow, who we referenced throughout, and what he was able to accomplish here. One of the most amazing jobs in the history of college basketball, especially when he started the program from scratch in the late 70s to early 80s. One of the things that, as you said, that it's different, UAB's different than than Alabama, Auburn, Ole Miss. And one of the reasons, it's a relatively young university. I think 52 years old. The basketball program is, I want to say we're going into our 48th year. So it's still relatively, comparatively speaking, a young program, a young university. We came in and we were able, based off the body of work that I'd had from my year at Cincinnati into the 12 years at Ole Miss, we had established a proof of concept. We obviously had established some relationships. There was a trust built. Brought in a staff that also had a lot of those same attributes, and together we were able to cobble together amidst COVID. When you couldn't do any in-person recruiting, everything was this. We should have known about Zoom before that, right? We could have made a couple of dollars in that market. Everything was done virtually. You really couldn't have any interaction. The vetting process was certainly very, very different. But our first year, we won 22 games. We were, again, in a situation where we were completely out of COVID and everything was still somewhat bizarre. We were able to pick up a couple of key pieces led by a young man named Jordan Jelly Walker, who was a transfer from Tulane, who came and was only the second player in the history of UAB behind one of our legends and Oliver Robinson to become the conference player of the year and the tournament MVP. We won 27 games, was at the time was a school record. We got back to the NCAA tournament. A lot of positive things were done there. And then through that momentum, we continued to build by bringing in quality players. And from year 2 to year 3, we went from 27 to 29 wins. We then came back and went back to the tournament in year 4. And then last year, again, despite getting back to the conference tournament championship game, we came up a little short and had to go to the NIT, where we were an overtime game away from getting to the NIT Final Four. I say all that to say it's all about players. Mm-hmm. It's all about, there are no such things as levels of programs. There's levels of players. UAB has a very well-respected program, a history of success long-term. We've been able to build off of that by having quality players. Mm-hmm. And as I said, as we opened this podcast, it's probably been the most challenging time of my career. We won 24 games last year. We were going to return 4 starters off that team. Quite frankly, it would probably be coming in, if I would have been able to keep that team intact, it would have probably been the most talented team that we had at UAB, without question, from an experience standpoint. And yet we don't return one player, not That's 1 minute. Yeah. We lost everybody. Now, some of those kids needed to find their frequency, I call it. There's some guys that are not playing as much as they want to play, so we try to help them find the right level for them. And many times that's maybe a step down. And then the 4 guys that I just referenced all went to Power 4 schools. Mm-hmm. This NIL world is real, and they all felt they needed to pursue this for their own personal reasons. And I supported them 100% and tried to help in any way that I could and facilitate what was best for them next. But in the meantime, again, we had to start from scratch. This is year 19 for me as a head coach, and I've never had to do this before, where we had to bring in a complete new roster. We just finished our 8 weeks of summer activity with them, which is very, very valuable, because you're trying to bring in pieces of a puzzle, and then you've got to see if the puzzle fits. And so, trying to build culture, trying to, build camaraderie. It's very, very difficult in this day and age, especially when you have to redo your entire roster.
How do you adapt? Okay, I mean, this is just crazy. I didn't really expect to go necessarily down the NIL trail with you, but this is all kind of exactly the other side of success, right? This is the part that nobody actually sees. How do you adapt to communicating and motivating these guys? Like I keep hearing, as I'm talking to more coaches or people involved in athletics, is that we're in a weird stage where, like, you have to be very, very cautious of how you communicate and motivate, because now you say one wrong thing, somebody can leave.
Yeah, I think the transient nature of our sport, I don't think is helpful for anybody. Mm-hmm. I am for player empowerment. I was a player myself. I was a transfer. And back when I transferred, 1986-87, after the 86-87 season, transferring was like a bad word. If you were a transfer, it was almost like you had a scarlet letter. Yeah. Something was wrong with you. And in my case, that was obviously the case. But not all transfers were, Coach Bartow kind of built UAB off a number of transfers, me being just one small piece in that puzzle. But now transferring is in vogue. I've got multiple kids on my team that I am their 5th coach in 5 years.
Wow.
4th coach in 4 years. It makes, you've got to rethink things. But I'm not one to sit around and wring my hands and say the sky is falling. I believe adapt or die, and I've my thoughts about the wacky world in which we live and how we got to this point and what should we do moving forward. But at the end of the day, nobody cares about that. Blazer fans, when we tip that ball off in November, they want to see the Blazers win. So I've got to understand and deal with the hand that we're dealt and try to play it as best I can. We can't compete on a financial term with many of the people that we used to compete with. For instance, when I played, UAB and Auburn played every year. It was a yearly game. That stopped many moons ago. But when I played, UAB, Auburn, and Alabama were all rowing in the same direction. We were all in the same race. We were all driving the same craft to try to get to the finish line. Now, those schools are just in another hemisphere as it relates to the financial opportunities that they can provide that we just unfortunately are not there. So it's just changed the dynamic of the quote-unquote mid-majors, the non-power fours. From a financial standpoint, they're at a different hemisphere. So what do? We try to get out and continue to work the relationships that we've built. We try to be very, very transparent in our desire for bringing a young man onto our team and help putting him in a position where he can ultimately reach his potential, both as a player and as an earner in this new day and age of intercollegiate athletics.
Something I do not want to get involved in any kind of politics of athletics or anything like that. That's not the purpose of our conversation, but I have often found it interesting, and maybe you can give me just a brief reason for this. But we've got now if you include South Alabama and even Troy's kind of getting on the map when it comes to hoops, like why are we not seeing more Alabama versus UAB, Auburn versus UAB? Why is that not helping? Because it does help the exposure of all programs in state.
Alabama and UAB have only played once, and that was in an NIT game that no one could control. It was a postseason tournament.
Yeah.
You've heard all these rumors and the speculation about why. We're obviously in the same system in UAB and Alabama. I just don't. Again, just being candid, I've had a number of conversations. Nate Oates and I are friends. Bruce Pearl and I are friends. Mm-hmm. And there's some things that are beyond the reach of a coach. I don't think Nate would have a problem with it, but I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. And then the Auburn thing, again, they played every year. And now when you're at the level that Auburn and Bruce has done he and Nate both have done a fabulous job. Bruce has gone to 2 Final Fours, in the last 4 or 5 years. Now he's got different opportunities than he was once presented. He's got to do what he feels is best for his program, as we all do. Our fans would love to see it. We would walk there if given the opportunity, and it just has not unfolded yet. There are, we've tried to since I've been back. Us in South Alabama, when I played, we're back in the old Sun Belt Conference, and we're bitter rivals. We tried to play them a number of times in my tenure here. We're going to play them again in the upcoming year. Troy went back to the NCAA tournament for the first time last year. Yep. Scott Cross has done a great job, and we're playing them this year. Samford is somebody, Bucky McMillan. Bucky had done a great job. He's got the Texas A&M job, and now Lenny Acuff, who's another tremendous coach, has come in as the next coach at Samford, and we're constantly in discussions about trying to put together a series there, because I'm like you. I think anything that you can do in the state, especially in a local situation, helps basketball while you're still competing in the throes of NFL playoffs and college football playoffs, meaning November, December, before people really stop and start focusing on basketball, which is after the new year.
Yeah, man. And I think, maybe a lot of people in our market, this show primarily, I think 90% of my listeners are in the Birmingham market, but most everybody's in the Southeast, especially in Birmingham. I mean, we've got a very strong basketball culture. Like, there are a lot of Alabama and Auburn fans that would love to see some exhibition games played in Birmingham, right? When Alabama comes up and gets to play at I don't remember the name of it, but the tip-off classic or whatever it is at the BJCC.
Yeah, it's the Legacy.
Yeah, it's just nice to have the team that you cheer for come to town, And so, I don't know, maybe as this show grows, Coach, we can get a movement out there and try to get the powers to be to change their mind.
There's been a movement for a long, long time. And again, it's not as easy as it once was. Scheduling has become, very, very difficult. Number one, it takes two to tango, so it's got to work for both parties, and it's got to be and what's in the best interest for both parties. And then you got to work out the logistics. We've had some things that on paper, I could get into a lot of things that people don't want to hear, but we've had a lot of opportunities against Power Four opponents, and then the logistics for whatever reason don't work and the things kind of slip away. But we understand the importance of trying to create as challenging a schedule as possible in the non-conference. Obviously you don't control your conference schedule, but in the non-conference you just try to prepare your team as best you can for the rigors of conference play. It's even become more difficult now because I don't even know what I've got. I've got 12 new guys. I haven't coached any of these guys in a game, so it's going to be trial by fire somewhat.
That's crazy. I want to segue in, Coach. I know you off the air, and I know that you're a believer. You're a person of faith in Jesus Christ, and your family lives that lifestyle. I'm curious as to how does faith help you make the decisions and lead the way that you do, not just your team, but also your family?
Well, I'm old school. I believe in analytics. You hear this all the time about analytics. So I believe in the numbers. Bill Parcells once said, "You are what your numbers say you are." So I trust the numbers as it relates to preparation and things that we deal with our team. But I'm a guy that coaches from the gut. I believe God gives us instincts through the prompting of the Spirit.
Amen.
And that's how I lead, quite frankly.
Yeah.
I always go in and I have a plan.
I just got the chills, Coach.
Well, I have a plan, but I also know that I'm going to have to make adjustments to that plan based on the prompting of the Spirit. Many times, and obviously it's the enemy's way of deception. There is no, when you're a basketball coach, it's 24/7, 365. I feel like an emergency room doctor on call, because there's never a time that something is not happening that is pulling for your attention. So you've got to be really, really disciplined, and it's easier said than done. And you've got to be very regimented in a schedule in order to give yourself time to hear the promptings of the Spirit. I'm sure you can relate as well, man. Life gets busy, and sometimes, man, you'll go 3 or 4 days, and you're like, man, I'm not hearing what's going on, because you're not listening, because you're just so busy. So again, I try to make sure that I'm spending time in the Word and understanding the position that I've been fortunate enough to be given. I don't take that for granted. I know that at the end of the day, when I meet my Maker one day, He's not going to worry about how many games I won or lost. He's going to say, hey, man, I threw Tyler right there in your lap, and boy, you fumbled that one. So I try to be very open to that, and I want our guys, the guys that are part of our team. I want, ultimately, our saying is I want them to become the best version of themselves, not only as players but as young men. And so I don't try to get too preachy, but I'm constantly trying to pour into them what I have been taught through my journey, and so that ultimately they too can see things the way that they should.
It's incredible. Have you ever found yourself thinking, you got 2 girls. Have you ever found yourself thinking like how funny God operates, and the fact that you chose a career path where you coach all men,
Yes,
young men?
What's funny is every man wants a son, and when Kimber, my wife, was pregnant with our first child, Megan, we were just so elated, that she had 10 toes and 10 fingers, and was healthy and happy, and just so blessed. And then in round 2 we had another girl, and my wife was like, hey, do you want to try for a boy? But at that stage of my life, I was just so busy, so incredibly busy. I almost felt guilty. I almost would have felt guilty if I would have had a son, because I was just gone so much. And so we didn't do number 3, simply because I was just so focused, man, so laser focused on climbing this ladder, and was super blessed, as you said. Now I feel like I've got 12 guys on scholarship, and then we'll have another 3 or 4 walk-ons, and then we'll have another 4 or 5 managers that are all in school. So I've got about 20 sons a year, honestly. And that's how I view it. I go into this, trying to make sure that I'm doing everything in my power, so that through their experience at UAB basketball, they're walking in the right direction.
Talk to me about, golly, it's crazy, because like when you start to hear and talk about other people's stories, you see how God's worked in their lives. And then all of a sudden I can sit here and through our conversation see ways that God's been working in my life that I'm like, I didn't even pay attention to it until we just got this conversation. How has the importance of your faith and your wife, Kimber, okay, I know, like 35 years of marriage, you guys have been through it, right? I mean, I've been married for 11 years and we've been through it. So how has it been, what has been the glue that has helped them, your family, kind of follow you through this process, right? There's a great deal of trust for a wife and two young girls to have to follow their husband and father through this coaching career.
Yeah, not quite 35. I hope that's you're forecasting. I think we're at about 32, but
Okay.
maybe we can get to 35. My kids didn't sign up for this. They kind of were this, but this is normal to them. There's some highs and some lows, man. We had referenced earlier that I was at Ole Miss for 12 years. That's a long time. Probably the greatest accomplishment of my coaching career. And I've said this before, and I mean this sincerely. I've been super blessed in that, for a guy that's been in the coaching space now going into 29 years, I haven't had to move a lot. I started out at South Alabama in Mobile, but I was only there about 8 or 9 months. Kimber and I were, just no kids. We moved back to Birmingham, which is our home away from home, and we were here for 5. Then we were in Cincinnati for 5, and we loved Cincinnati. And then we were at Ole Miss for 12. So the greatest accomplishment is when I got the Ole Miss job, my youngest daughter, Caitlin, was going into first grade, and I never had to move her. She was there the whole 12 years.
Wow.
My deal ended in March of 18. She graduated in May of 18, and we moved to Birmingham in June of 18. So really, really fortunate in that regard. So my kids have kind of, but the 12 years at Ole Miss weren't all smooth sailing. I mean, I was walking the plank a few times.
Yeah.
They'd given me they'd covered my eyes and given me the cigarette, and they were about to light that thing in front of the firing squad, and I was able to wiggle off a few times. It wasn't smooth for them, and I was really, really conscious of it when they were young, because you know how kids are. And when you're in a town like a college town like Oxford for Ole Miss, everything revolved around Ole Miss, and so they were either very, very popular because we were winning, or their dad was a bum because we were losing. So that wasn't necessarily fair to them, but it was all that they knew, and it's all that they know now. Now they have their own lives, but they still are very, very conscious of the fact that dad needs to win basketball games.
That
So my wife came into it, it was her choice. I told her, I mean, this is not the Army. You weren't drafted for this, but it was kind of her choice. And it's a stressful way of living. But again, it's the way that we chose to live.
Man, it's just funny that this whole podcast was born out. The whole reason why I titled it The Other Side of Success was because in not most people, but a lot of people that knew me before they got to know my struggles and things that I was dealing with, they were always like, when they found out I was struggling with drinking or whatever it may have been at that time, I'm 40 and a half years sober now. There was just this overwhelming thing of like, holy cow, like you have everything you possibly need. You've got a successful business, you got a beautiful family, all these things. And I'm sitting there thinking like, man, there's like a whole nother side of success that people don't see. Like I'm a performance-based addict. Like I don't know how to deal with not performing at the highest level. And so when I don't perform at the highest level, it messes me up. It creates some sort of chemical imbalance in my brain. I'm not like that anymore. I still struggle with that, but I want to save that conversation. Maybe we'll bring you on at the end of the year, because a head coach in Division I sports, to me, I cannot imagine what it's like facing that pressure. And if you want to touch on that for a second, that's fine. But man.
Yeah, it's not easy. It's not easy, that's for sure. That's where you've got to rely on your faith, your family, your belief in what you're doing. You have to have a foundation. We call it stacking work. We'll start the fall term here in a few days, and we'll start another journey in UAB basketball, and the season will be here before we know it. And I always, I challenged our guys. I said, what is the foundation? What do you want? What's the ultimate goal? What are you trying to get accomplished? And what's the foundation of that? It better be the work. You better be able to stand on a body of work. You better be able to stand on a belief that you're doing this for. Don't ever forget your why. Why are you doing this? Why have you made these sacrifices? Again, I've been super fortunate. I've been in the front chair in the SEC for 12 years, my alma mater for 5, in the Big East at Cincinnati, a great program for a year. So I've been super, super fortunate. But there's been a lot of sacrifices, a lot of decisions made based around, my profession. If you're not grounded in doing it for the right reasons, then you're gonna live a tumultuous life. I'm a terrible loser, as I said earlier, and I think some people think glass is half full, some people think glass is half empty. I think the glass is broken. I always think worst case scenario, and I I just read a book. I don't know if you're a reader, but the name of the book is Thinking in Bets. It just talks about it was written by a professional poker player who's a clinical psychologist, and pretty fascinating about how life's a little bit like poker, and that you're constantly trying to make the best decisions without having the full scale of information. And throughout the book, it talked about making sure that because you got to make quick decisions. Life comes at you fast, but you have to have a standard. You have to have a baseline from which you're getting all of your balance, so to speak. For me, I look at things always from the end back. I don't start and try to build forward. I always look at worst case scenario at the end of the season. So right now, as I am planning how to get our team to function the way that I hope that we can get them to function, I am thinking of worst case scenario at the end of the season in 2026. This was a mitigating disaster, and how do I keep from making sure that does not happen? That's how my brain works.
Yeah.
So I am always going from back forward.
Wow.
So that I don't live in regret. I always try to think about worst case scenario in every development.
Yeah.
And it's the way in which that I function, and it's the way in which I lead. Quite frankly, I always think worst case and then move back from that scenario.
That's turning anxiety into a superpower. Being able to
Well,
work.
I do try to use it to fuel me.
Yeah. I
so
mean,
to
you're
speak.
taking something, when you worry about the future, you're like, okay, I'm worried about the future, but how can I work that backwards to get you right back here? So it's like you're doing reverse psychology, man. There's your retirement job right there, man. You're just going to be a therapist.
That or a bartender.
Both.
A lot of stories.
Man, so when it's all said and done, coach, and not foreshadowing or anything, but when you're done with your guys, not done, you're done with coaching, but when you know that these guys, this is the last time they're going to get off of your bench, like what do you want them to take away with them?
Probably the lesson that I want my own children, my daughters, to understand, and it's probably, if I could boil it down to, okay, you only can imprint one thing on their brain that's going to last forever. I would say the value of perseverance. I am a believer in and day out, man, life ain't fair. And it's so easy to get off track, and it is so easy to feel sorry for yourself, and it's so easy to blame others, and it's so easy just to wallow in that. And I'm a big believer in the value of the next step, the value of the next day, persevering. I haven't done it with this team yet. I'm going to. For the most part, we all go through these phases. You probably can attest. Especially as a man, an athlete, a leader. You think about three phases, man. Money. Oh, I got to get this money. I got to get this money. And if I get this money, if I get so much money, then I'm going to be happy, because then I'm going to not have any concerns. And again, I've been fortunate enough to make a little money, and you get there and you're like, this ain't it. This is not very satisfying. It's cool. I mean, I'd rather have it than not, but this ain't it. And then you say, okay, and then it's about power. I've got some money, now I need some power. You get in a position of power where you have some control, and you're like, okay, I'd rather have power than not have it, but this ain't it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get to this thing called respect. And so I think most especially as men, we desire to be respected. And I'll challenge my guys. What are the things that you respect? What do you respect? And does your life reflect that? If these are the things that are important to you, your value system, does your life reflect that? So for me, for instance, I'll share, like, I got great respect for toughness, physical toughness, mental toughness, the ability to persevere, the ability to get up and move forward when things are not going according to plan. And as you and I both know, things are not going to go according to plan. So I really respect toughness. I respect loyalty. I'm a very loyal guy. I'm a ride or die guy, believe it or not, man. If you're on my team, you're on my team for life. I believe in integrity. I believe in doing right for the right reasons, not just when people are watching, not just for something that you can get as a residual, but doing the right things. And again, that was just a blessing for how I was raised. And I believe in production. I believe, again, as I quoted earlier, Bill Parcells, you are what your numbers say you are. You got to produce. And I'm in the ultimate scoreboard business. That scoreboard better make sense, or I'm going to be out of business. So those are the things that I respect, and I want my life to reflect those values. And so I have those conversations with our guys. I will have them. to try to get them to understand that their life needs to mirror what's important to them.
It's funny. I was actually talking to our mutual friend Brian Murphy on the way in today, and he was asking some questions about, the direction of the show and just life in general. We have good conversations like that. But one of the things I told him, I was like, man, talk about your how you feel the spirit working in your gut. It's kind of me too. I was just sitting there telling him, I was like, man, God does not call us to just be sedentary. We cannot expect to sit on the couch, not work, and there be $1 million. Now, is God capable of doing that? Sure. He's God, right? He can work in miraculous ways. I fully believe that. However, we don't perform for our salvation, but what I'm going at is that there is a level of work that is required to be a positively contributing member of society. You have to put some action behind something, right?
No, it's everything. Faith without action is dead. You know that.
There you go.
My favorite verse in the Bible is Hebrews 11:1. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. So the basis of a believer, in my opinion, is you have to have a strong faith, but faith without action is dead.
That's right.
Everything has to be actionable. I'm not a guy that sits around and has a lot of staff meetings and just to talk the talk. It frustrates me. What's the action behind it? What are we going to do? What is the plan? Everything needs to be actionable, in my opinion, and ultimately legacy comes back to impact. What impact have you made? That will establish what your legacy will be.
Man. All right. Before we get into my last very quick and fun segment, I ask the same question to end every episode: is being where you are right now, the head coach for the University of Alabama at Birmingham, the Blazers, what is your definition of success as it is right now?
Ultimately, best version of self. I try to do that. It's so dangerous, and we're a comparable society, and I do it, you do it, we all do it. It's so stupid. You want to compare your journey with somebody, a peer or a colleague, whatever. And it's so stupid. It just leads to frustration and what have you. I'm just working daily on trying to be the best version of me. And that's what I want the young men that I have the privilege of coaching to become. Just be the best version of you, man. Make sure that you maximize you so that when you look back, you do not have regret. I've got a sign in our locker room. If you're going to be a college athlete, if you're going to be a college basketball coach, if you're going to be an insurance salesman, pain is inevitable.
Amen.
Pain of discipline or pain of regret. That's really your choice. And so we want our guys to endure the temporary pain of discipline so that they don't have to deal with the long-term pain of regret.
That's great, Coach. Thank you for sharing that and just having this incredibly candid conversation with me today. I've learned a lot, and I know these listeners are going to just be thrilled to just take what you've said and just absorb it. There's so much powerful content, and I'm going to throw some quotes out there from the show. I've already written them down. You're such an effective communicator. So thank you so much for that. Let's close out with just a little bit of fun. I called this my rapid fire segment. The first question I want to ask you is, what's the biggest sports moment that will stick with you forever?
Well, man, I've been fortunate that I've been a part of a lot of big moments as a player and as a coach. Probably the biggest, though, because it goes back to, at the end of the day, I'm not in the SEC anymore, but I still, on Saturday, when college football comes back here in a week, I'm going to be watching the SEC. I've got a lot of friends and a lot of stories and a lot of time. Again, privileged enough to be an SEC head coach for 12 years. The biggest win of my career would have to have been the 2013 SEC Tournament Championship against Billy Donovan, a first ballot Hall of Famer. As a matter of fact, he's getting inducted into the Hall this fall. And the Florida Gators, because of the unlikeliness that it happened and the fact that it was only the second time in the over 100-year history of Ole Miss basketball that they had captured the SEC Tournament Championship. So that one will always be special.
That was big time, man. Toughest opponent you've ever faced as a player or a coach?
Man, there's a lot of those too. I mean, I have had a chance to coach against multiple Hall of Fame coaches and players. Probably the most difficult, and this just kind of popped on me, the most difficult stretch that I ever went through, and this is a true story. I'm going to give you the Cliff Notes for sake of time. But when I was a senior at UAB, we played, as I said earlier, we used to play Auburn every year. And we played Auburn on a Friday night before the Iron Bowl. And it was the first time ever that Auburn had played UAB. We used to always play at the BJCC, and then it started going to campuses. When the Iron Bowl started moving to campuses as opposed to playing at Legion Field, the basketball game would follow suit. So when they would play in Tuscaloosa, when Auburn would play Alabama in Tuscaloosa, Auburn would play UAB in Birmingham. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah.
And when the game was down at Auburn, we would play down there. The first year that we played them was at the BJCC. The second year was at Auburn for the first time. And the third year, my senior year, was at UAB for the first time. We won a hard-fought game, a 2-3 possession game. I can't remember the score, but I do remember I had 27 points. It's funny how you remember that. And so we win the game. This is on Friday night. So we win the game. On Saturday, we wake up, we go to Birmingham Airport, and we fly to Vancouver, British Columbia. And Saturday night, the same night that we just traveled to Vancouver, British Columbia, we're playing the UNLV Running Rebels, the defending national champion Running Rebels, who were put on probation. And the day before, they were told that they could defend their national championship. This was the Larry Johnson, Stacey Augmon, Greg Anthony led Running Rebels that went all the way to the finals undefeated and got beaten in the national championship game by Duke. So we played Auburn on Friday night in Birmingham in a hard-fought game. We traveled on Saturday to Vancouver, British Columbia, played in a football stadium, and played UNLV that night. Needless to say, that did not work out well. So that was probably the most challenging thing that I've ever been through as an athlete.
Unbelievable story.
That's a true story. You guys can
Golly, that's good. That is so good. All right, last one, Coach. You get a week's paid vacation, all expenses paid, drinks, food, lodging, travel, you name it. Are you going to the lake or are you going to the beach?
Man, I like the water, but I'm a beach guy.
All right.
I can look at the water and it's something tranquil about it, something soothing, but man, I love the beach. I love the smell of it. It's my happy place.
I love that. Well, Coach, again, I just want to say so much. Thank you for your time. Ladies and gentlemen, just Andy Kennedy, the head coach of the UAB men's basketball team, just gracious with his time. Coach, we appreciate you, and we definitely wish you nothing but the best of luck.
Hey, thank you, Tyler. I've enjoyed it.
All right, buddy.